How you doing? It's Dan here. Hope you had a good weekend. Right, today we're going to be talking about appetite. It's coming up to lunchtime. I'm starting to feel peckish. I'm going to tuck in something. I've got some beetroot and some goat cheese that I'm roasting out there. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyhow, just some tips on the cues to look for in appetite. And this is an important one for those who are looking to try and lose a little bit of body fat, because if we're eating when we shouldn't be eating, then we could be eating too many calories, which essentially turns to body fat. So this is important for those who are looking to lose a bit of body fat, and also just for general health. So do you know how long you should be eating, when you should be eating, how the gaps between each meal? What I wanted to do initially is just talk through the certain cues behind how you should be feeling before you start to eat a meal. This isn't a snack, this is kind of like breakfast, lunch and dinner. So 0 hours, you've just eaten, and it normally takes in 15 to 20 minutes before your brain starts to connect with your gut and starts to send signals to say whether you're satisfied or not. So this is an important stage, because if you gobble your food down too quickly in the early stages of eating, then you can tend to overeat because the signals haven't connected with your gut yet. So this is why we tend to advocate we need to spend 15 to 20 minutes eating a meal. And that obviously has huge ramifications on whether or not you take on board too much food or drink in the first place. So that's step one, sort of 0 to 1 hour. After 1 hour, you should still, if you're eating good food that's kind of balanced right, you should be still feeling satisfied. Satisfied means that you have energy, you don't crave anything sweet, anything salty, you don't need something else, and you're not hungry essentially. 2 hours after eating, you may start to be a little bit peckish. Maybe that's when a snack might want to come into the equation. Not that snacking is a bad thing, but if we're looking to try and burn body fat, then we need to nail our first meal and then be cautious on our snacks. I think too often than not, people are a little bit scared about being hungry, so they're always grazing, and that can be an issue in terms of how many calories we eat in a day. After 3 hours, if we scale being on a scale between 0 and 10, 10 being absolutely ravenous and 0 being just eaten, then you should be around about a 7 or 8 out of 10. So it's time to eat. Do you know what I mean? Now is the time to eat. 0 to 3 hours, I could sit down and have a meal. 4 hours after eating is like, get out of my way. Nothing's going to stop me. If you're like me, I'm hungry. Sort me out. So there we go, 0 to 4 hours. And really, you don't really want to be going longer than 4 hours after eating, because that's when our hormonal status can change. We can start dropping into a kind of a low, and our body's kind of starting to get stressed out a little bit. So the things is the kind of what I wanted to talk about, the things that we can look at that affect our appetite, that can make us undereat, or more importantly, overeat. Now, the first one I wanted to talk about is mindfulness. Been talking a lot about that recently. You need to connect with and come out of autopilot and understand why you make certain choices behind food and drink. Now, all of us have kind of emotional connections with food. It's a way of kind of feeling loved. It makes you kind of a short-term feeling of upliftment. It gives you a bit of energy. So it's no surprise that we look for food when we're bored, or we're stressed, or we're tired. When we're tired, it's common for people to grab hold of some kind of stimulant, whether it's sugar or coffee, to give us a lift. And we might do that unknowingly, and all of a sudden we've consumed loads of food that we didn't really need. So you've got to understand what the triggers are. So what I would recommend is writing down a journal. You could even just take a photo on your smartphone of your food, and then just make a kind of a conscious journal of how do you feel after that food? When was the point you started to feel hungry? And if you had that snack or you had that food and you weren't aware of it, then why did I do that at that moment in time? How did I feel? What was my energy like? What did I just do? Was I stressed? These are things that we need to kind of start with. Number 2, the reasons why we tend to be hungry is the quality of food, what we call empty calories. If you're eating food that are processed or tend to be too simple in their nature, sweets, chocolate, cakes, what we call empty calories, the amount of nutrition in them is very low versus the amount of calories involved. So we tend to take on a lot of calories, but our body and our brain doesn't feel satisfied, and we get this short-term feeling of being satisfied, and then we're left a bit empty. So that can be one of the reasons. Again, that can come out in your journal. Stimulants, again, normally links into feeling tired. When people are tired, they tend to subconsciously reach for a coffee or a tea or a cake or a biscuit or a bagel or whatever it is, and to give them a little lift. And obviously that has a bit of a pike in sugar levels, and then obviously a big drop. So then we can be on this bit of a roller coaster all the way through the day, and we're kind of binging on snacks and stimulants to keep us uplifted. So if that's you, that's quite common for people that are kind of in autopilot and they're just working hard and they're not thinking, they're not being mindful. Number 3 is quantity. If you've not eaten enough at breakfast, which is probably the number one thing that I see with people, when they look at their food diaries, they're just not eating enough food. So a breakfast should be a meal, just like your lunch and dinner. Most people have a cracking dinner, but if you look at their lunch, it's not so great. And then if you look at their breakfast, they either skip it, or it's low in calories, or it's not balanced with all the macronutrients, so proteins, fats, and vegetables or carbs. So if you're underdoing the quantity, by 11, you're going to be ravenous at breakfast. Then you're always on a bit of a catch-up, so you're making poor choices through the day. So your appetite could be really strong purely because you're not eating enough. And we tend to burn more calories the more we eat, which is a bit perverse, but that's how it works. And number 4 is about the kind of ratio of different macronutrients. Macronutrients are proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. So what we tend to find as a general rule, and this is going more down towards metabolic typing, is if you've got a stronger appetite going this way, your choices of your macronutrients, your proteins, carbs, and fats, need to be more towards protein and fat, because that's what keeps you satisfied for longer. And if you have a kind of weaker appetite, you can take or leave at mealtime, which is, so some people are. Then we go towards more sort of leaner meats, fish, but we're going more towards vegetarian. So there's a kind of a spectrum there, and you need to again, looking at a journal and being aware, being mindful, you need to understand what foods suit you and keep you satisfied, give you energy. And that is not a generic thing, that's very tailored and individual to you. So if I were to say a thing, if you were to look at all these kind of aspects of appetite, try and work out where, which ones are kind of going to help you, and you'll find how if you kind of nail your meals and you're aware of how you feel after them and you get it right, how much more energy and more focused you are, and you'll see the weight dropping off too. Hope that helps. I'll see you at boot camp.